Edward didn't mean to eavesdrop, honest. He just popped into his favorite little cafe for a quick caffeine fix and some laptop time before heading home. The place was a gem, cozy, not too loud, with leather armchairs that practically hugged you when you sat down. Perfect for a guy like Edward, who preferred his own company and a good playlist over small talk with strangers. He ordered a black coffee, plopped himself at a corner table, and fired up his laptop. On went the earbuds. No music, though, just the comforting hum of silence to keep his focus sharp. He even pulled up the hood of his sweatshirt, cocooning himself from the world. Edward was in the zone, or at least he thought he was. A few minutes in, a familiar laugh sliced through his bubble. He froze mid-sip. That giggle, that high-pitched cackle that could wake a coma patient. It was Claire, his fiancée. She was sitting at the table behind him, hidden by the towering back of a leather sofa, chatting away with her posse. Edward's first instinct was to spin around, flash a grin, and say, "Hey, fancy meeting you here." But then he heard his name, and something in the tone made his butt stay glued to the chair. "You're really going through with it?" came a voice he recognized as Lily's, Claire's perpetually giddy sidekick. "Obviously," Claire said, her laugh bouncing off the cafe walls like a rogue ping-pong ball. "You should have seen his face when he was blabbering about the honeymoon. He's all Bali this, Bali that, while I'm picturing myself on the back of Justin's motorcycle tearing off into the sunset. Me and Justin, we've got our own honeymoon planned. He's got that bad boy vibe, makes my heart race and, well, other things too, if you catch my drift." Edward's brow furrowed so hard he nearly sprouted a unibrow. Justin? Motorcycle? What the heck is she talking about? "But what if he figures it out?" piped up Emma, the cautious one of the trio. Claire snorted. "Are you kidding? Edward? He's so clueless he wouldn't suspect a thing if I texted Justin right in front of him. Doesn't even peek at my phone. Pays for everything like a good little boy. Wedding's all on him, too. Me? I just smile and nod. Zero risk, all reward. I'm basically winning at life here." The girls erupted in laughter, and Edward's grip tightened on his coffee mug. He could feel the steam rising, not just from the cup, but from his own head. "It's like a movie," Lily squealed, clapping her hands like she'd just won front-row seats to a rom-com premiere. "Exactly," Claire said, her voice dripping with glee. "I owe it to myself to make it a spectacle. Picture this. I'm at the altar, veil and all, and I hit them with the dramatic pause. Then, bam! I can't. I love someone else." The girls gasped in unison, like they'd rehearsed it. "And then," Claire continued, practically vibrating with excitement, "out in the church courtyard you hear it, the roar of Justin's bike. I toss the bouquet, sprint out in my dress, and hop on behind him. We peel out, crowd screaming, petals flying everywhere." Edward's jaw clenched. His coffee was going cold, but his blood? Oh, that was boiling. Claire wasn't done. "Girls, your job is to film it all. I need every angle, Edward's face, the guests' gasps, the whole shebang. This is my ticket to social media stardom. I'll be the wildest influencer out there." "Legendary," Lily chirped, clapping again. "You're a total star." "I know," Claire purred, smug as a cat with a belly full of cream. Edward sat there, still as a statue, his knuckles white around the mug. His brain was a pinball machine, lights flashing, bells ringing. 3 years together, and this is what she thinks of me. A naive ATM with a wedding band? And who the heck is this Justin guy? I've stepped into a nightmare scripted by a reality TV producer. But instead of leaping up and flipping tables like some action movie hero, Edward stayed put. He took a slow, deliberate sip of his now lukewarm coffee. No outburst, no scene, just a guy in a hoodie, plotting his next move while the cackling coven behind him planned his public humiliation. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. By the time evening rolled around, Edward was a man on a mission, though you'd never guess it from his Oscar-worthy performance at home. He greeted Claire with his usual bear hug, the kind that said, "I'm your dependable fiancé," not, "I overheard your evil master plan in a cafe." They chatted about wedding nonsense, flowers, cake tiers, the usual drill, and Edward played along like a champ, nodding at all the right moments. Then, with a dramatic yawn that could have fooled a sleep therapist, he climbed into bed and pretended to conk out. Claire, blissfully oblivious, was snoring within minutes. The woman slept like she'd just run a marathon, or maybe plotted a betrayal worthy of a soap opera. Either way, Edward waited until her breathing settled into a steady rhythm. Then, with the stealth of a ninja in socks, he reached over to her nightstand and snagged her phone. He'd seen her punch in her passcode 1,000,000 times, 1234, because apparently even her secrets were low effort. The screen lit up with a soft click, and he was in. First stop, the chat with Lily. Edward scrolled, his jaw tightening with every word. "You sure this'll go off without a hitch?" Lily had typed, probably twirling her hair like some cartoon villain's henchwoman. "Totally," Claire replied. "Edward won't suspect a thing. He's already shelled out for everything. When I hit him with the 'I can't' at the altar. Oh, Lily, picture his face, the guests' faces. It's gonna be pure shock and awe content gold." Edward's stomach churned. Shock and awe content? He wasn't a person to her. He was a walking TikTok trend. He kept scrolling, diving into the next chat. The one with Justin. "Almost time, babe," Claire had written. "He doesn't even know I've been crashing at your place for 6 months." "You sure this'll go smooth?" Justin asked, his typo-ridden text oozing bad boy charm, or maybe just bad grammar. "Packed my bags already," Claire shot back. "Edward thinks he's funding our honeymoon. Naive idiot." Edward's fingers hovered over the screen, trembling slightly. 6 months? Half a year of lies, and he'd been footing the bill for her little motorcycle fantasy? He wasn't just naive. He was the poster boy for Sucker of the Year. But instead of smashing the phone, tempting as it was, he calmly screenshot every incriminating word and emailed them to himself. Evidence secured, he slipped the phone back onto the nightstand like nothing had happened. Claire didn't even twitch. Morning came, and Edward was still in character. He shuffled into the kitchen, whipped up some toast, and pecked Claire on the cheek before heading to work. She smiled at him, all sunshine and deceit, completely unaware that her fiancé was now a one-man detective agency. Edward kept his cool, though. Kept it so well he deserved a standing ovation. But the second he hit the office, he made a beeline for Nick, his best friend and resident wise guy. Nick was the kind of buddy who'd seen Edward through every breakup, every bad haircut, and that one time he accidentally joined a pyramid scheme selling vegan protein shakes. If anyone could help him turn this disaster into a counterattack, it was Nick. Edward strode into Nick's cubicle, dropped into the spare chair and grinned, a grin that was half exhaustion, half vengeance. "Hey, man," he said, leaning in, "you're not going to believe the mess I've stumbled into." Nick looked up from his coffee, eyebrows raised. "Hey, dude, what's up? You look like you've got a story that's about to make my day." And with that, the stage was set. 2 pals, 1 betrayal, and a whole lot of plotting to come. "I need to pull something off," he said, leaning forward like a man about to pitch the heist of the century. Nick, mid-sip of his lukewarm office coffee, smirked. "You want to hack someone?" As a cybersecurity whiz, Nick lived for this kind of drama. He was basically a keyboard-wielding superhero minus the cape. "Something like that," Edward replied, cracking his knuckles like he was warming up for a showdown. Nick's smirk faded into curiosity. "Who's the target?" "Some guy who's got a thing going with my fiancé," Edward said, his voice low but steady. "I need to dig deeper." Nick's eyes widened, then narrowed with righteous indignation. "Holy crap, man. I thought you two were solid. Give me his name. Now. You think I'd let my best bud drown in this mess alone?" "Justin," Edward muttered, the name tasting like sour milk. Edward also showed Justin's cell phone number. "That's all I've got." Nick clapped his hands together, already halfway to his laptop. "Justin, huh? Let's ruin his day." Half an hour later, Nick had tracked down Justin's social media, a greasy digital footprint that screamed, "I ride a motorcycle and think passwords are optional." Nick, being the genius he was, danced through security loopholes like a ballerina on a tightrope. Justin's account was a sitting duck. 2 hours tops, and they were in. Edward hovered over Nick's shoulder, watching the screen light up with secrets. What they found was a goldmine of jaw-dropping nonsense. Justin wasn't just lover of Claire. He was juggling another girlfriend, Jessica. The messages were a soap opera on steroids. "You really love me, right?" Jessica had typed, her desperation practically dripping off the screen. "Totally, babe," Justin replied. "Just need a little time. I'm cooking up a surprise for you." Jessica wasn't buying it. "You've been weird lately, especially since you borrowed that chunk of cash from me." "Don't sweat it, baby," Justin shot back. "I love you. I'd never hurt you. Everything's gonna be perfect. And the money? I'll pay you back soon, promise." Edward's jaw hit the floor so hard it nearly dented Nick's desk. He's got a girlfriend. Then what the heck is he doing with Claire? He rubbed his temples, trying to process the fact that his fiancée's side piece had a side piece. Nick grinned like a Cheshire cat. "This guy's a walking disaster. Let's stir the pot." Without hesitation, they dug up Jessica's number from Justin's contacts. Edward typed out a message, his fingers trembling with a mix of rage and glee. "You sure your boyfriend's loyal? I've got proof he's playing you. Let's meet." A reply pinged back in under a minute. "Who are you? What are you talking about?" Edward didn't flinch. "I'm the guy whose fiancée Justin plans to steal from the altar. You in?" Jessica's response was instant. "Where and when?" After a quick back and forth, they settled on a spot, a gritty biker club downtown. Apparently, Jessica had ties to the place. Maybe she was a regular, maybe she just liked the vibe. Either way, it was the perfect setting for this showdown. Edward could almost hear the revving engines and smell the leather already. Nick leaned back in his chair, cracking his neck. "Well, buddy, you've just upgraded from sucker to puppet master. What's next?" Edward smirked, a dangerous glint in his eye. "Oh, we're just getting started." Edward stepped into the biker club like a fish flopping onto a motorcycle rally. The place was a sensory overload, dim lights, the growl of engines rumbling through the walls, and a faint whiff of gasoline mixed with cheap beer. For a guy who'd spent his life as the straight-A, tech-obsessed, nice boy, it was like walking into a parallel universe. He half expected someone to hand him a leather jacket and a wrench just to blend in. Jessica was already there, perched at a high-top table, her arms crossed and her face a storm cloud ready to unleash lightning. Next to her loomed a mountain of a man, broad shoulders, a scarred-up mug, and arms covered in tattoos that looked like they'd been inked with a chainsaw. This was Rex, her brother, and he didn't so much sit as occupy space like a grizzly bear claiming a cave. "Prove you're not full of it," Rex growled, his voice a low rumble that could have rattled the shot glasses on the bar. Edward didn't flinch. He pulled out his phone and laid it all on the table. Screenshots of Justin's texts with Claire, Justin's lies to Jessica, the whole sordid mess. It was like spreading out a buffet of betrayal for them to feast on. Jessica's eyes scanned the messages, her jaw tightening with every swipe. "That little—" she hissed through clenched teeth, cutting herself off before the profanity could escape. "He swore he loved me, fed me all this garbage about a future together, borrowed a fat stack of cash, and now he's planning to run off with some other chick? He's a con artist." Her voice cracked, and a single tear slipped down her cheek. For all her tough exterior, it was clear she'd bought Justin's sweet-talk hook, line, and sinker. Rex, meanwhile, stayed silent, his gaze locked on the screen like a predator sizing up prey. Then, with the slow deliberation of a man who'd cracked skulls and asked questions later, he stood up. The chair creaked in relief as he rose, towering over the table. "Where's he at right now?" Rex asked, his tone flat but dripping with menace. "No clue," Edward admitted, shrugging. "But he'll show up at my wedding. I've got a feeling it's going to be one heck of a party." Rex's lips twitched into something that might have been a smirk, or maybe just gas. "Then that's where we'll greet him." Jessica wiped her eyes, her sadness morphing into a steely resolve. "Oh, he's not getting away with this, not with my money, not with my heart, and definitely not on a motorcycle with your fiancé." Edward nodded, a grin creeping onto his face. So we're in this together. Damn right, Rex said, cracking his knuckles like he was warming up for a symphony of pain. Let's give this wedding a little extra flavor. They hashed out the details over a round of sodas. Edward wasn't about to test his lightweight status with the club's whiskey selection. By the end, they'd added a special dessert to the wedding menu. It wasn't cake or pie, oh no. It was a heaping serving of payback, with a side of chaos, and Edward couldn't wait to see it plated up. As he left the club, the roar of a passing bike echoed in his ears. For once, he didn't feel like the naive sucker in the story. He was the guy with a plan, and a couple of unexpected allies who looked like they could bench press a Harley. The big day had arrived, and the church courtyard was decked out like a Pinterest board gone wild. White ribbons fluttering in the breeze, candles flickering romantically, and flower arrangements so perfect they could have been photoshopped. Guests filled the rows of chairs, fanning themselves in the open air, buzzing with anticipation. Edward stood at the altar, cool as a cucumber. He didn't fidget, didn't sweat. He knew the real ceremony was about to be a blockbuster. Claire, meanwhile, was radiant, practically glowing in her over-the-top gown, her hair sculpted into a masterpiece that screamed main character energy. She glided down the aisle on her dad's arm, every step dripping with confidence. She wasn't just here to get married. She was here to steal the show, though not in the way Edward had once imagined. Her bridesmaids giggled and whispered behind their bouquets, phones at the ready for the big moment they'd been briefed on. The priest, oblivious to the brewing storm, launched into the vows with all the gravitas of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. Do you, Claire, take Edward to be your lawfully wedded husband? Cue the pause. Claire bit her lip, channeling her inner soap opera star. Her eyes shimmered with fake tears as she took a deep, theatrical breath. I can't. Her voice quivered just enough to sell it. I love someone else. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave at a baseball game. Claire's dad dropped his head into his hands, probably wondering where he'd gone wrong. The bridesmaids erupted into hushed squeals, fumbling to hit record on their phones. Half the guests followed suit, turning the courtyard into a sea of raised screens, everyone eager to catch the drama for their group chats. Claire spun toward the courtyard entrance with a triumphant flourish, her dress swishing like a victory flag. Right on cue, the distant roar of a motorcycle cut through the air. Justin rolled up, all leather and swagger, yanking off his helmet with a grin that said, "I'm the hero of this story." Claire took a step toward him, ready for her grand escape. But then, vroom, vroom, baby. The ground trembled as a thunderous chorus of engines drowned out Justin's lone bike. A literal horde of bikers poured into the courtyard, their machines gleaming under the sun like a pack of metal wolves. One by one, they blocked Justin's path, cutting off his exit. Guests shot to their feet, some gaping in awe, others clutching their pearls, and at least one uncle fumbling for his phone to call 911. Leading the pack was Rex, looking every bit the biker king in his weathered leather jacket. He swung off his motorcycle with the grace of a bear dismounting a tricycle and stomped over to Justin, who was still smirking like he had this under control. Without a word, Rex grabbed Justin by the belt, yes, the belt, and hoisted him up like a rag doll. "Ladies and gentlemen," Rex boomed, his voice carrying over the stunned crowd, "this jerk's my plaything today. Sorry for the interruption." With that, he slung Justin over the back of his bike like a sack of discount potatoes. Justin flailed, his cool guy act crumbling. What are you doing? Let me go." Rex just grunted, unimpressed, and climbed back onto his bike. "Let's roll, boys." The biker posse revved their engines in unison, peeling out of the courtyard in a cloud of exhaust and gravel, leaving Justin's protests fading into the distance. Silence fell. You could have heard a pin drop. Or a bouquet if Claire had remembered to toss it. She stood there, frozen mid-stride, her jaw practically unhinged. Her motorcycle getaway? Poof. Her dramatic exit? Kaput. This was not the script she'd rehearsed in her head. Slowly she turned back to the crowd, her eyes darting for sympathy, for applause, for something. Instead, she locked gazes with Edward, who was sporting a smile colder than a popsicle in a snowstorm. He stepped forward, hands in his pockets, casual as you please. "Well," he said, his voice cutting through the hush, "since we're all here, might as well enjoy a little movie." He reached into his suit jacket, pulled out a remote, and aimed it at a massive screen that had been set up behind the altar. The guests leaned forward, phones still out, as the screen flickered to life. Claire's confident smirk melted into something that looked a lot like panic. Edward pressed play, and the courtyard braced itself for the encore nobody saw coming. The giant screen behind the altar flared to life, and there it was, Claire's grand scheme in black and white text, blown up for all to see. The first messages flickered across the display, ripped straight from her chat with her bridesmaids. "You sure this'll go off perfectly?" Lily had asked. "Totally. Edward won't suspect a thing," Claire had bragged. "I'm gonna ditch him at the altar and ride off with my lover into the sunset. This show's gonna make me a social media legend." The crowd started buzzing like a hive of confused bees. A few gasps escaped as the next batch rolled in, some steamy exchanges with Justin that were too spicy for a church courtyard. Edward had tastefully skipped the X-rated details, but the implication was enough to make eyebrows shoot up and jaws drop. Then came the kicker. He paid for the whole wedding, clueless that I'd dump him at the altar. Such a good boy. Guys like him are made to bankroll a princess like me. The courtyard went dead silent. You could have heard a fly sneeze. Claire's face drained of color faster than a cheap dye job in the rain. She stood there, rooted to the spot, as every guest processed the fact that their golden girl was more like a gold digger with a motorcycle fetish. But Edward wasn't done twisting the knife. Up popped Jessica's texts with Justin, painting the full picture of his double-dealing dirtbag routine. "You really love me, right?" Jessica had pleaded. "Totally, babe," Justin had lied, right before asking for that loan. Now even Claire's jaw tightened. Her knight in leather was a two-timing sleaze with a side hustle in heartbreak. All eyes zeroed in on Claire. The vibe from the crowd was a mix of, "What were you thinking?" and "You picked that guy?" Her bridesmaids, who'd been all giggles and camera-ready minutes ago, now looked like they'd rather teleport to Antarctica. Claire's mom clapped a hand over her mouth, while her dad swayed like he might faint into the nearest rosebush. For a split second, Claire just stood there, marinating in the silence, her perfect plan crumbling like a stale wedding cookie. Then she snapped. "This isn't real!" she shrieked, flailing an arm at the screen. "It's all fake! A setup!" Edward didn't even glance her way. He turned to the crowd, calm as a guy ordering coffee, and raised his voice. "Folks, I'm calling off the wedding. No reception, no cake, no nothing. Sorry for the inconvenience. Hope you enjoyed the show." The guests erupted into chaos, some snickering, some whispering condolences, others just grabbing their purses to bolt. The poor priest, caught in the crossfire of this unholy mess, mopped sweat off his brow and muttered a prayer under his breath. In all his years, he'd never seen a "till death do us part" turn into a "till drama do us part" quite like this. Claire lunged forward, snagging Edward's sleeve in a last-ditch grab. "You can't do this to me," she wailed. "We can still go through with it. It was all a joke. Performance art. I just wanted a wedding with some cinematic flair, something unforgettable." Edward turned, meeting her wild eyes with a smile so serene it could have chilled a volcano. "Claire, drop the act. The jig's up. Everyone's seen the real you now. Good luck out there." With that, he shook off her grip, spun on his heel, and strolled toward the exit, leaving Claire stranded in a sea of stunned faces. Her dress sparkled under the sun, but her spotlight had dimmed. She wasn't the star of this story anymore. The crowd parted as Edward walked away, a few folks even clapping like they'd just watched the finale of a twisted reality show. And in a way, they had. Claire's world didn't just crumble. It turned into a full-on dumpster fire. Her parents, mortified by the wedding fiasco, slammed the bank vault shut. No more princess allowance. They couldn't even look her in the eye without wincing. Her bridesmaids, those loyal cheerleaders of her doomed scheme, flipped the script. They didn't ditch her completely, but the group chat was now a roast session. "Claire, seriously, what were you thinking?" became their new catchphrase. She begged them to delete the wedding videos, her voice cracking as she pleaded, "This was supposed to be my big moment." But the damage was done, and it wasn't even their fault. The real mastermind? Nick. Edward's sly best bud had been in the crowd, phone in hand, capturing every second of the chaos like a guerrilla filmmaker. He'd edited it into a viral masterpiece, complete with slow-mo shots of Claire's meltdown, Justin's biker abduction, and Edward's mic drop exit. The internet ate it up. Titled "The Wedding That Never Was," it racked up millions of views, turning Claire into a local celebrity. Not the glamorous influencer she'd envisioned, but a walking punchline. Memes popped up everywhere. When your side piece gets a side piece, and Claire's guide to epic fails. She couldn't scroll X without seeing her own face staring back, usually captioned with crying emojis. As for Justin, his fate was a mystery wrapped in a hilarious enigma. No one knew exactly what Rex and the bikers did with him. Rumors ranged from dumped in a ditch to forced to join a book club. But his social media told a wild story. Suddenly, his profile featured a photo shoot straight out of a fever dream. Justin, bruised and sheepish, decked out in a pink ballerina tutu, a giant bow perched on his head like a cherry on a humiliation sundae. Word on the street was he'd sold his precious motorcycle to pay Jessica back, then gone into hiding. His buddies kept texting, "Dude, what happened?" But Justin wasn't talking. That tutu pic was worth 1,000 words and 1,000,000 laughs. Edward, meanwhile, watched the fallout unfold with a grin that could light up a room. He didn't gloat publicly. No need to. Karma was doing the heavy lifting. A few weeks later, he decided to cash in on the honeymoon he'd already paid for. But instead of wallowing solo, he roped in Nick for what he dubbed the bachelor honeymoon. The two jetted off to Bali, ironic, considering Claire's original plan, and turned it into a brocation for the ages. On a sun-soaked beach, Edward lounged with a drink in hand, the kind with a little umbrella that screamed, "I'm over it." He snapped a photo, waves crashing, sand between his toes, and posted it to his socials with a caption that hit like a velvet hammer. "Thanks for the vacation, Claire. Freedom tastes amazing." The likes poured in, but he wasn't done. Over the next few days, his feed became a highlight reel. Edward and Nick flanked by gorgeous strangers at a beach bar, tearing up dance floors in neon-lit clubs, living their best lives. Every post was a middle finger wrapped in a tropical breeze. Claire, holed up somewhere with her shattered dreams, couldn't stop herself from stalking his profile. Each photo twisted the knife deeper. She'd wanted fame, adrenaline, a spotlight. She got none of it. Edward? He got the last laugh, a tan, and a story he'd tell for years. As he clinked glasses with Nick under a Balinese sunset, he didn't even think about her anymore. She was just a footnote in his epic comeback. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel. I wish you a great mood and good luck.